Around 3 months ago, I made a video where I gave my brutally honest review on chess.com, and in today's video, it's time to do the same for Lichess. While I've not played on Lichess anywhere near as much as I've played on chess.com, I've certainly used their tools on the website to make up for this. Today, we'll be exploring not only the gameplay, but every single inch of the website. We'll split the video up into sections, and at the end of the video, we'll give it a rating out of 10. Before we do start this video though, I want to make it very clear that this video does not intend to throw hate on any chess platform whatsoever. We just want to give a fair and unbiased review of it. With that being said, let's start with our first section, gameplay. As I said in my video on chess.com, I understand the perception of how good the gameplay is on a certain platform is all down to preference. After you play on a certain platform for a little while, you're going to start preferring the small things on the website, like their pre-moves. So to make sure we'll have some depth in this category, we'll be looking at tournaments, the playing pool, and things along those lines. Let's start off by looking at the playing pool. The most standout thing about Lichess's playing pool is their use of Glicko 2. I don't at all hate Glicko 2 by any means, but I've kind of grown to prefer Glicko 1 in online chess. Glicko 2 on Lichess is almost directly responsible for inflated ratings roughly between 1000 and 1600 ELO on the website, so if you're an amateurish player, it does make things a little bit difficult for you. Not every game will be like this, but chess is a game of fine margins, and losing to players playing at a level they shouldn't be at can kill that momentum very quickly. I'm not going to be taking any points off Lichess here, because to be quite frank, when it comes to ELO systems, I am absolutely no expert. I thought I'd just give my 10 cents here. I should also mention that after around the 1800 ELO mark, this problem seems to diminish significantly. So I can say from experience at my level on Lichess with these ratings, I don't really run into this problem at all. Now for possibly the most important thing when it comes to gameplay on any platform. How many cheaters are there? This is super difficult for me to say because I play the majority of my games on chess.com. However, I coach a lot of students that play on Lichess. Link to my coaching is in the description, by the way. And I can base a lot of my findings on the countless games that I analyze for them. I can say with a lot of confidence that Lichess has a lot less cheaters than chess.com. It might not be the most incredible difference, but it's definitely a notable difference on a game-to-game basis. I am basing this off my analysis of the Rapid and Classical pool though, so there might be a cheating epidemic in Bullet and Blitz, I just don't really know. You will face cheaters here and there, that's just natural. But I found even in classical games on Lichess, there seems to be very few cheaters, which is absurd to me, considering if you play classical on chess.com, you are almost guaranteed to verse one. Lichess's reporting system seems to be in better working order too. Again, like I said in the chess.com video, it's hard to know for sure the efficiency of fair play functionality because a lot of it is kept confidential. But Lichess gives you the opportunity to explain why you're reporting a player to give credibility to your report, rather than just clicking a button. This filters out people reporting for no reason and allows Lichess to process more reports with a higher accuracy. I will mention that as Lichess has a much smaller player base, the stress load on their anti-cheat is a lot lower, making things more difficult for a site like chess.com. There are no paywalls on the website whatsoever, so that's really great for the free-to-play experience. One negative is the matchmaking options are very limited. For a website that offers so much customization, you're very limited as to the opponents you can be pairing in the pool. For example, you can change the rating range of your potential opponents, but not things like account age to filter out potentially suspicious accounts. Bots. The bots on Lichess are super cool. I genuinely couldn't be more impressed by them. I know this seems harsh, but I'll get it out the way early. It's stupidly difficult to find the bots on Lichess. On the homepage, you can click Play with the computer, but this is just the standard engine, which you can choose difficulties 1 through 8 on. However, to get to actual unique bots on Lichess, you need to go to Community, Players, and Online Bots, which although may seem easy, isn't as intuitive as it should be considering how big of a role I think the feature should play on the website. I won't take points off for this, but I do think that it should be more accessible. Why not just have it as a drop-down of the play category? Anyway, these bots are fantastic. They're free, they're not made with the sole intention of marketing purposes, and they actually aren't just reskinned engines. Most bots are trained in a unique way. Instead of a 1500 level bot just being a version of the max stockfish set to 10% less efficient moves, the 1500 level bot actually learns how to play chess from millions of games played on Lichess by 1500s. This leads to a more accurate reflection of a 1500 strength player. To explain how realistic these bots are, they even learn how much time the average 1500 takes to play certain moves, allowing you to simulate real-time management against a computer. I know a lot of the bots on Lichess are community-driven, but I have to reward Lichess for being open source where I see fit. And this is really perfection when it comes to bots. To be completely honest, I see very little way that they can improve this section of their website. Tournaments. The tournaments on Lichess are absolutely fantastic. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be ignoring any titled arena or prize arena that the average person wouldn't be able to participate in, as it would be completely irrelevant to most people watching this video. To make this section easier to digest, we're going to be directly comparing it to chess.com's arenas and seeing how it compares. In a Lichess tournament, if someone is cheating, you can kick them from your team and they won't be able to play in the remainder of the tournament. This is not the case on chess.com, where they can play until the arena ends, or they're banned from the website. If you accidentally mess up a tournament preset once you've started the countdown for the tournament to start, you can go back and change it on Lichess. On chess.com, you need to cancel the tournament and restart it. Lichess gives you a help menu on creating your own tournament, plenty of duration options, which chess.com doesn't have, tournament descriptions, and a much cleaner time control selection and more variant options. The tournament entry conditions are more detailed too, with minimum account age options weeding out potential cheaters. However, this does beg the question why this function isn't available in regular matchmaking. Lichess bots can also join arenas, so if your friend group doesn't have enough players, you can throw in some bots to fill the gaps. Berserking is also a super cool feature. It allows you to forfeit half of your allocated time in order to get extra points if you manage to win the game. This not only allows lower rated players a better chance of beating higher rated players, but gives higher rated players more incentive to verse lower rated ones. Overall, I think the tournaments on Lichess are fantastic. I do think that the UI could be improved a little bit, but we'll save that for later in the video. Variants. The variants on Lichess are pretty good, but once again I found it a little bit strange that there was no variants option on the play dropdown on the homepage. You need to click create a game and then click on the variant dropdown. This is just a small quality of life thing though, so we won't dwell on it too much. Super weird that duck chess isn't a variant option on Lichess. I feel like every time I'm playing casual chess in person, there's a good chance we end up playing duck chess, so not entirely sure why Lichess doesn't have it. You can get pretty quick pairings on Lichess variants, although I can't really speak for people who are higher rated on the platform. I assume like chess.com, your pairings would be limited eventually. There's not much else to say when it comes to variants on Lichess. They absolutely do the job, and although there could be a little bit more innovation, I don't really see the need for it. With all that being said, I'm really happy with what Lichess has to offer so far. Nothing on the website is disappointing me whatsoever, apart from a few customization options that are holding it back from getting a solid 10. There are some cheaters on the platform, but I think we can all agree that that's just unavoidable. Everything on Lichess is free, and I'll continuously remind you of that throughout this video. But for the gameplay section, let's give it a 9 out of 10. We're so close to a perfect 10 here, but there's always room for improvement. Puzzles. Puzzles are something that in my opinion are super easy to get right on any platform. There should be plenty of filtering options for players to sort through and a wide variety of puzzles. Lichess ticks every box when it comes to this, so let's start exploring. Puzzle selection. The puzzle selection on Lichess is absolutely amazing. First of all, majority, if not all of their puzzles derive from real games that have taken place on the platform. This means if you've played a game on Lichess, a tactical sequence from your game might be a puzzle on the website. In fact, if you go to Puzzles, Puzzle Dashboard, from My Games, you can see if any of your games made it. Here's an example of one of my games, and even though it's a simple mate-in-one and aimed to help beginners, it still derives from a real game. Anyway, this feature means that Lichess puzzles are almost infinite, which cannot be said for all websites. I've never played a Lichess puzzle that was glitched or ambiguous, and they seem to do the job perfectly. Lichess also has plenty of puzzle theme. You can sort by the opening it derives from, the game phase, a specific endgame, or puzzles with a particular motif. Although sites like Chess Tempo go one step further and give you options to practice endgames with a certain amount of pawns on the board and whatnot, I actually think the phrase less is more works well on Lichess. One other important aspect of Lichess puzzles is that some puzzles have multiple solutions. If there is mate in 2 on the board, but 2 separate ways to achieve it, both are correct answers. This does not exist on a site like chess.com, where there is only ever one single correct move. Lichess puzzles are free, they're instructive and of good quality, and I really don't see what's not to love. Puzzle, Racer, Streak, and Storm. Lichess offers some game modes within their puzzle feature. Puzzle Streak is essentially Puzzle Rush Survival on chess.com. However, instead of affording 3 strikes, you can only afford 1. One criticism is the sound alert you get for completing a puzzle is quite jarring and unnecessary, but apart from that, the game mode is perfect. There are also several thousand maximum rating puzzles on Lichess. On chess.com, there are only a few hundred. This means if you play Puzzle Streak a lot, you're unlikely to repeat puzzles too often, although it could still happen. Puzzle Racer is kind of like Puzzle Battle on chess.com, where you'll race against other players to solve the most puzzles within a certain time frame. You're not limited to playing against just one opponent though. You can play up to 9 players, totaling 10 in the lobby including yourself. Puzzle Storm is a mode where you'll simply play against the clock. You have 3 minutes to solve as many puzzles with the black pieces, each puzzle being with the black pieces as to not get confused when quickly solving puzzles. If you get the puzzle right, you get some extra time, with multiple correct puzzles multiplying the added times you're awarded. If you get the puzzle wrong, time is taken off. Overall, with all of the puzzle modes on Lichess, it's very difficult to make criticisms. Obviously, they're simple concepts, but it's nice to acknowledge that they're perfected. Maybe I'm being overly positive, but I find it really difficult to not give Lichess puzzles a 10 out of 10. I genuinely tell all of my students and my viewers on YouTube to use the puzzles on Lichess as they're genuinely unmatched. There's not much else to say really. It's free and perfect. Enough said. Learn. The learning tools on Lichess are virtually limitless. I understand for this category we're going to be skipping over a couple of features, but for the sake of this video not being 1 hour long, I think that's okay. I'll take a moment again to remind you that this is entirely free. There are no ads and no paywalls. So let's get started with analysis. The Lichess engine is amazing and by default is better than most of its competitors. The default depth of the Lichess engine is much higher, giving it more accurate evaluations of certain positions. Lichess is open source, allowing you to use whatever engine you'd like. This is pretty far out of my expertise though, so I won't pretend like I know what I'm talking about. But you guys have mentioned it to me in the comments before, so I thought I'd mention it. Lichess will give you suggestion arrows for the best moves in any position. The larger the arrow, the better the move, which is a cool way to visually display the engine. I don't like the Lichess evaluation bar though. There's so much space on the left side of the screen, and the evaluation bar is squished on the right side between the board and the panel. It's also a washed out color and just doesn't seem as nice as it could be, although it's perfectly functional. Lichess has a show threat feature, which shows what each side is threatening to play on the next move if the opposition doesn't address it, which is a nice feature. The Explorer database is also a massive win for Lichess. You can see the Master database, which shows the win percentages of every game played by Masters in similar positions. It also shows you the most common moves Masters play in the position you're on as well. Lichess goes 2 steps further with this, first showing the same information, replacing Masters with all Lichess players, also giving you the option to see your own statistics, win percentages, and most common moves. One addition I think would be nice is filtering the rating ranges on some of these options. Masters and Lichess players are very broad descriptions. Candidate Masters and Grandmasters are simply incomparable, and it would be nice to see specifically what Grandmasters do in certain positions. Likewise, it would be nice to see 1000 to 1200 rated Lichess players play, as opposed to 2000 to 2200 players. This is actually a huge problem for me. Although to my understanding, other websites don't have this feature either, I feel like it would be really useful. Apart from this, the analysis board is pretty much perfect. Everything is laid out nicely, and there's plenty of integrations, like turning your analysis board into a study or going on and playing against the engine. Study. The Lichess study feature is absolutely incredible. There is no reason to use any other study feature on any other website when the Lichess one exists. Essentially, a study is a collection of analyses that are split into chapters. For example, if you play over-the-board games, you might make a collection of all your games in a study. You can import games from score sheets or other websites to directly put into your study, and from there it acts like an analysis board. However, this time, it'll save all your analysis in the study. You can write notes, create sublines, and put annotations in the game or position that will be saved for you to look at later. Another huge plus is the study can be viewed and interacted by other Lichess players if you allow it. There is also the option to have the board synchronized among all viewers, which is especially useful for chess coaching. The one downside of the study feature on Lichess is that it never remembers the board orientation. For example, if you played with black and want the board from the perspective of the black pieces, if you reload the page, it'll swap back to the white pieces. This is mildly infuriating though, and not super important. The study is a simple feature and it's executed absolutely perfectly, so there's not much else to say here. So let's look at something else. Practice. Where chess.com has endgame trainer and drills, Lichess has practice. Practice is extremely basic and really only offers any educational value for players just beginning to play chess. I think this is a bad thing though, because players of all elo ranges should be encouraged to practice chess. Of course, a general puzzles feature on any website removes the need for some of the practice tool, but when it comes to endgame or middle game training, Lichess doesn't really have any feature to accommodate for this. Chess.com's endgame trainer isn't even that good. It's quite outdated in my opinion, and the positions it trains are finite. Lichess could easily use the same system it uses for its puzzle feature and create some kind of endgame or middle game trainer that players could use. This would also allow the feature to be used by all players, not just by beginners. Endgames or middle games could be sorted by themes and difficulty, meaning just like in puzzles, you would have to earn a certain rating to continuously be challenged by harder positions. I don't really like the practice feature, and although I know it's not supposed to be a replacement for the features that I'm outlining, it's a shame that Lichess just doesn't have them. That's about it for the Learn section on Lichess. Almost everything is perfect, but their practice mode, or lack thereof, is quite disappointing. The score would easily be a 10 out of 10 if they had a functional endgame or middle game trainer, but because they don't, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. User interface. I'm going to stay true to my word when I talk about the user interface on Lichess. I made a video previously comparing Lichess to chess.com, and I spoke about how poor I thought the UI was on Lichess. In reality, the UI is extremely basic. I think for a lot of people, when they start using one website, because it feels familiar to them, they just associate it with being quantifiably good. When you actually look at the UI from a critical standpoint, there are a lot of flaws with it. First, we'll look at the color scheme. Whilst in my opinion it's quite dull, we are playing chess and not Subway Surfers, so this does make some amount of sense. The use of gradients and slightly different shaded colors on the website is a little strange to me, but nothing too serious. Buttons and space usage are easily my biggest problems with the UI. Whilst they get bonus points for everything working as intended, a lot of the buttons on the website are unclear, oversized, or just ugly. An example of this is on the homepage. The text on this button just runs off the button and cuts off completely. There's no function hyphenating the missing text. I won't go through every example of this on the website, but there are a few, and whilst this doesn't really affect the user experience, it's just not so easy on the eyes. If we're playing a game on Lichess, the chat takes up literally a third of the space on your screen, whilst the game notations take up maybe 2% of the screen. Game notations are quite important in any chess game, much more important than the chat feature that usually only gets used for draw offers. Realistically, whilst the UI should be an important part of any website, Lichess is a non-profit organization, so I'll give them a pass here. Because it's open sourced, you can use any browser extension to customize the way it looks as well, so if you don't like the way it looks, you can change it. But for the UI as a whole, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Not for me personally, but the functionality is great, which I know is more of a UX thing, but I don't think anyone's going to mind. And although the UI isn't amazing, it's not terrible either, and it's just very simplistic. It's great that you can customize the UI too with browser extensions, and if you don't want to use a browser extension, Lichess does have a few customization options as well. Lichess does have a bunch of other features that we have brushed past in this video, however they're not features that you can use on a day-to-day basis, and if we want to keep this video short, we have to skip past them. However, we have covered all of the important things on the website, and now it's time to do a quick rundown of all of our ratings. The gameplay on Lichess is really great. There's a few things that can be improved upon, like a few more variants and some better matchmaking tools, but generally it's got one of the better playing experiences out there. A solid 9 out of 10. The puzzles are simply amazing. I really don't know how I can explain how much I love them. I genuinely wouldn't change a thing aside from some weird sound effects in timed game modes. Easily a 10 out of 10 for me. The Learn section is where Lichess is let down a little bit. Whilst it did hit a lot of important beginner features, Lichess doesn't really have any great endgame trainer or middle game trainer. Lichess doesn't really have any great endgame trainer or middle game trainer functions, which would make a great addition to the website, letting it fall to an 8 out of 10. The UI on Lichess is just fine. Nothing super special, but the fact that literally everything works as intended gives it a huge boost. On other websites, buttons break a lot and display information wrong or just don't work. This doesn't happen on Lichess. 7 out of 10. Something amazing about Lichess is that it's 100% free. You can donate, of course, to keep the website running, but realistically, if you want to play on the website, you don't have to pay at all. I think considering all of the features that we've looked at in today's video, giving Lichess a 9 out of 10 feels very fair. I think there are a lot of improvements that can be made to the website still, like a middle game trainer and an end game trainer, but apart from that, there's really nothing missing. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Lichess and what website I should review next. But apart from that, I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.